Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's lesson where we're going to be talking about the blues. We will learn what is the blues, what does it mean, what are the chords, and how can we navigate it. And we're also going to be talking how to use the blues as a way to start learning about improvisation, how to create solos, how to create a bass line, all improvised, so all on the moment. Another thing I'll do at the end is I'll show you guys 5 great licks to learn and play on the blues. All the tabs and the play along for this lesson is available on my Patreon, so make sure to check it out right on the description here when you're done with this video. You can download everything, you have access to hundreds of other lessons, so make sure to give it a try. Now, with no further ado, let's check it out. What is the blues? So I went ahead and got us the F7 blues written down. This is a very basic and simple blues. We can even call it like a generic blues right now. And we're going to be doing the key of F because it's just a very friendly key for everybody, not only for, string instruments, but it's great for horns like saxophone and trumpet and trombones. They usually like to play in the key of F or B flat or even E flat. So let's understand what's happening here. The first thing we're going to notice is that a blues is a layout. That's what it is. A blues is nothing more than a form, a way to write music. And it has a very specific order in which the chords come out and how many measures we're going to use. Many times, pretty much every time, the blues is going to have 12 measures. We can say, oh, this blues has 60 measures sometimes, or this blues has a little different number of measures. It can still be considered a blues in a way, but a real, blues, when we're talking about it, really means 12 measures. And we're going to organize it in 3 lines like that. So we're going to have the first, the second, the third line. Now, we are in the key of F7. It's important to understand we're not really in the key of F major here, right? Because F major wouldn't have that F7 chord. F major would have an F major 7 chord. So F7 is the key of this blues right here. And it doesn't mean that we are playing technically F mixolydian, which would be a scale that fits over a F7 chord. Even though we could use the F mixolydian, in this case, we're going to use a different scale for this lesson. Having said that, let's call this chord our 1 chord, and let's call it 1-7. Now, as we can see, it just gets repeated over and over again, 4 times, okay? Sometimes we could have a 4 chord here, so I'm just going to put in parentheses. There's an optional 4-7 chord right here, but for the sake of this exercise, let's just say there's not. Let's just have the 1 chord for the first 4 measures. And then on the 5th measure, which is the second line, comes what I would say the most important chord of what makes a blues, which is the 4 chord. So if F is 1, B flat would be the 4. How do we know that? Well, we gotta know the F major scale. So in F major, we will have F, G, A, B flat, okay? Those are the first 4 notes of the F major scale. So if F is 1, B flat is the 4. And in this case, we're also going to be making it a 4-7 chord. So we have the B flat 7 chord on the 5th measure. It gets repeated, and then we move back to the 1 chord here. Also very important, on the 7th measure, we go back to the key, to the tonal center, right? And now on the last line, there's a lot of things happening here. And then we have another very important moment here, which is the 5 chord. And this measure here, which is measure number 9, is very different than measure number 5. Because on measure number 5, we always want to have the 4-7 chord here, okay? There's pretty much no exception to that. Otherwise, it's not really a blues anymore. It becomes something else. But on measure 9, like this one, we could have other combinations. We could have other chords. Sometimes we could have a G minor here and then a C7 over here. Sometimes we can even have this backwards, B flat 7 and then C7 here. We can have a lot of different ways to play the blues here on measure 9. But for this generic, very basic blues, we're going to use the 5 chord, followed by the 4 chord again. And we're going to go back to the 1. And I put here a final C7 in parentheses because we're going to play the C7 to take us back to the beginning because this is a loop, right? But if I were not going back to the beginning, if I was just about to finish the song, then I would just finish on the F7 right here. So this is optional. This is just when we go back to repeat, which we usually going to do many times throughout the performance. And there you have it. That's the whole blues. It's just 12 measures and technically just 3 chords, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. So just so you can see very clearly, in the key of F7, F is the 1, B flat would be the 4, and then C would be the 5 chord. That's all that we need to play the blues. As I said, we could have other combinations and more jazzy blueses, let's just say. So there is a jazz blues form that uses different combinations of chords and more chords, but the idea is the same. The idea is that we're going to have the 1 chord at the beginning. We're going to have the 4 chord on measure 5. Measure 9 and measure 10 is basically a cadence leading us towards the 1 chord. So the 1 chord here on measure 11 is kind of always happening, doesn't matter which blues you're dealing with. So I like to think about it that the first line is like the exposure of the idea, right? So I had a teacher always telling me the first line is a very, very sad story. Someone saying, oh, my life is really, really sad. Something very bad is happening to me, right? Like telling the story. The second line, it's continuing that story, but we have to change a little bit so it doesn't get so boring. So we add this extra chord here so we can, take it somewhere else that doesn't stay within that same 1 chord. But it's still, you're saying something bad is happening. I'm having a tough time right now. My life is very tough. And on the third and final line is the resolution. So we can have many things here. I have a sad, tragic ending to the story, or maybe a good ending to the story. Maybe something happy happened at the end. But the idea is that this here is where change comes. The 5 chord brings change. The 5 chord takes us to that dissonant sound, that more outside sound that wants to bring us back to the 1. So that's one interesting way, I think, about thinking of the blues. And I find that very important because when we talk about improvisation later and how to create an interesting motive or an interesting storyline to our own solos, I like to think about developing the solo here, and then further developing here, but with small variation, and then resolving the idea over here. That matches the motive, the idea behind the blues, which is that resolution after the exposure of the theme. And that's a very deep concept because we can bring that concept to any other kind of music later. And that's the point of this lesson. If you are new to improvisation, if you don't understand exactly how to create a solo, how to create a bass line, or how to just improvise, how is it possible that someone can create something from scratch, right? The blues is the best place to start. It's where most jazz musicians in general, they would start learning about the blues and talk about improvisation, is to learn by playing the blues first. And there is one very important reason why we do that. It is because when it comes to taking a solo over the blues, we don't have to think about a bunch of different scales. We don't have to think about, okay, there's a scale for the F chord, there's a scale for the B flat, there's a scale for the C. We could, but for the sake of today just learning how to improvise over the blues, we can just think about the blues scale, okay? So I want you guys to memorize what is the blues scale. So let's write them in intervals first. The blues scale is nothing more than the root, and then we're going to have a minor third, followed by the perfect 4. And then we're going to have the blue note. I'm going to call it the BN, okay? Which is augmented 4. We're going to talk about that soon. And then we're going to have the perfect 5. And we finish with the minor 7. So what does that mean? In the key of F, that would be F, A flat as the minor third, B flat as the perfect 4, B natural as the blue note or augmented 4, Then we're going to have C as the perfect 5 and E flat as the minor 7. And there we go. We have our blues scale right now, okay? The blues scale sounds like this. Back now. And it's a very, very interesting concept of playing the minor third when your chord has a major third, because F7 chord is F, A, C, and E flat. Let's just put it here, F, A, C, and E flat. That's what this chord is, okay? If I play a F7, it sounds like that. And that's the chord shape for that. But if I play the blues scale, I have the minor third instead of the A, which is the major third. And the way we can, really think about it, it's honestly not to think about it too much. That's my take on this, especially if you're a beginner. We can analyze this further in the future with a better understanding of music theory and understanding how to improvise in a deeper level. But right now, I recommend don't worry too much about it. Does it sound good? That's all you should worry about. Does it sound good when you play it while someone's playing F7? Let's say the guitar player is playing an F7 chord, and then you play this scale. Does it sound good? And it does if you know how to use it. And that's what matters right now, okay? That's how we're going to think about it. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to play the F7 blues as a play along, and I'm going to just take a 2 chorus solo over it so you can see how I can use the blues scale to create some ideas. And for the ones that don't understand what chorus means, a chorus means one way through a song, okay? I know it's confusing because the chorus of a song can be something else if we're dealing with like pop or rock, but in general, the chorus of a song when someone talks about, blues or jazz, means one way through the song. Okay, so I'm gonna play twice through this, so a total of 24 measures. And I'm just gonna free improvise right here, completely whatever comes out of my mind right now. Keeping in mind 2 things. The blues scale, so I'm just gonna be using these notes for all the chords. That's important to understand, okay? We're not gonna use the blues scale for F7 and then a different one for B flat. No, it's the F blues scale for the whole song, the whole blues. When the B flat comes, I'm going to still be using the F blues scale. When the C7 comes, I'll still be using the F blues scale. And for the ones of you that maybe understand, well, but some notes are going to clash, like the notes, they're not going to add up so well. How can you deal with that? Well, it's about how you use it. So I'm going to make sure not to emphasize certain notes that would clash so much with certain chords. And I'll be trying to keep that layout in mind. Show an idea, similar idea, and then some kind of resolution on the last line. So let's keep an eye on the chords and see how this sounds. Here we go. So, as you can see, I was using a lot of repetition, playing the same phrase over and over again. There's no issue, there's no problem at all in repeating the same idea. That's something that a lot of beginners, they are afraid to do. When you learn about improvisation, they try to play a phrase, then another phrase, another phrase, another phrase. It's just a bunch of stuff. It's like, think about communicating an idea. When someone's talking and they're saying, about this, they're talking about this stuff, and then they start talking about something completely different. They start talking about whatever subject unrelated to before, and then a new subject, and then another subject. You just, as a listener, you don't understand what's going on, and you're gonna lose focus. You're not gonna care what that person is talking about. It's the same thing for music. You want to give the listener something to understand and something to connect. So if you have a phrase, something like that, just playing the scale up basically. I'm just playing up and down the scale, but with some rhythm, some articulation, hammer-ons and pull-offs. But I played many times over. I didn't just play once and then did a different idea, then a different idea, then a different idea. I just play the same thing often, many times, right? That's something that makes the blues so useful and so helpful for beginners, because we have the opportunity to just stay within the same chord for a long time and then change, but still use the same idea on the fourth chord, on the measure 5. And then when measure 9 comes up, then I do a resolution, right? So when measure 5 comes up is when I play a different idea. That's what I did on the solo. So when you improvise, when you get to play along and you play yourself, remember, less is always more. How about you just think about 2 notes to get it started and just play those 2 notes as your first 4 measure. So for example, let's just play the 3rd and the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4. That can be your phrase. Just play it. A little bit of variation on the rhythm maybe, but you should just play it 3, 4, 5 times. And then the B flat chord comes, play it again, but with maybe even more variation. And then when the 9th measure comes, then you can do a new phrase. But if you get a grasp of this concept of repeating, and then giving the listener a resolution, you will have solos that people will care about. Just listen to your heroes, listen to the people that you like and how they do their solos. You're gonna find a lot of the times they are doing this. They are telling a story, right? And the better you get, the more complex you can make your story while keeping it very interesting. But even then, complexity doesn't mean quality, right? So some of the best solos and the best musicians in the world, they didn't have to play a lot of notes to make something that connects with people. So that's something to think about, right? Something to understand. Where's the balance that you enjoy? Where do you want to be as a musician? So think about how you like to communicate your ideas. So the next thing we're going to do now is understand how could we accompany, so create a supporting bass line for someone else that's taking their solo, right? And that's where things get different than the blues scale, because the blues scale is great for improvisation, but is not so good for creating an accompany because we're missing that A, that major third, right? So we're gonna need to adapt for each chord this time so we can do the accompaniment. So let's understand what chords we're playing. We have the F7, which is the F, A, C, E flat. B flat 7 is B flat, D, F, and A flat. And by the way, if you're someone that's not sure, how do I know the notes inside this chord? How do I know what a B flat 7 is or what a F7 is? That's something to definitely check it out and improve on. A little bit of music theory can take you a very long way. So if you don't have any place to get started, I definitely recommend, again, checking the Patreon on the description. There are theory lessons there. There are things that you can look to understand how does a chord work. What is a C7? What is a F7? What are chords? Where does the name come from? And you're just going to understand that it's just 4 notes or 3 notes. That's what a chord is. And then later you can understand scales and other things. But basically, what we are doing right now is just writing down what the chord is. So we have B flat 7, and then last one is C7. So let's just have C7, which is a C. It's a E, it's a G, and it's a B flat. So now we have the notes for each chord. So what I recommend to get started is to keep it kind of boring, very simple. but boring, which is 1, 3, 5, 7. That's all you play. So if I'm gonna play the blues, I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. That was one chorus through the blues, right? It is simple, but it does work. So if you ever want to play blues with your band, by yourself, or you want to just accompany the blues, that's a great place to start. How do we make that better now? Let's improve it. Let's go to the next level. But the next thing to do is the exact same we just did, but let's now use approach notes to connect one chord to the other. So on the first 4 measures, we're going to stick with that F7 arpeggio. But on the last note of my F7, I'm going to play a note that is an approach to the B flat. What is that? The chromatic approach is basically any note that is a half step away from your target. It's about where you're going to. So I want to go to the B flat 7. B flat's here. So I can play either the B or the A to approach the B flat. So if I'm finishing my F7 here, this is measure 4 of the blues. So I'm playing F, A, C. Now I want to go to B flat, right? Well, how about I get the B here and then I go to B flat? And we just did a chromatic approach. So instead of playing F, A, C, E flat, which is what the bass line was before, I'm gonna play F, A, C, B, and then the B flat, because that B takes me to the B flat. And I could have even played that an octave higher. That's even more connected in a way, right? Because it's just right there. There you go, B flat. But this helps to make the bass line less, in its own world and more connected to the band, also into the music. So that's all we're doing. So when we go from this measure to this measure, the last note is a chromatic approach. This measure to this measure, the last note is a chromatic approach. And here, same thing. And then here, we're always going to have a chromatic approach connecting each of these chords. So let's see very slowly how that looks like. So very slowly from measure 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Measure 2. Here we go, measure 4. Chromatic. Okay? Connect back to F. So right there, I did what we call a double chromatic approach. I play B flat, D, and then E flat, which was never, part of the plan, but the E flat is approaching the E, which is approaching the F. So the target was F, and since I knew I had 2 beats left in the measure, because I played the first beat, second beat, the third beat is going to be preparing the approach, which prepares the next chord. Again, something very common that we do when we play bass line. So not only a regular chromatic approach, a double chromatic approach, and technically a triple chromatic approach, right? Because the D also would be a half step from the other half step. So measure 6 becomes this, from measure 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back to measure 7. We're going to approach C. So to approach C on measure 9, I play F, A, C, and then I play this B here to go to this C. This is measure 9. From measure 9, I'm going to go like this. 1, 2, 3, B again to approach the B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the same double chromatic approach from before. Measure 11. And here again, double chromatic approach to the C this time. And then you can finish any way you like there, the last measure. But the idea is that now our line is much more connected. Let's play once. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a much more organic, much more interesting bass line right now. And I would say that is a very good point to get as a goal right there. So can you get to that place where this is something that you don't have to think about it? Because this is, I played for you guys so you can see, you have the tab, and you can just copy me. But can you do this now in the key of B flat, for example? So if we are in the key of B flat, the 1 chord is B flat, the 4 chord is E flat, and the 5 chord is F7. So can you do the same thing on that key? How about in the key of C? C chord is the 1, F7 is the 4, and G7 is the 5. Can you do the same kind of bass line on that? And there's always 2 possible chromatic approaches towards a target. So if I'm playing F7 going to B flat, I could have played the A going to B flat. So that again gives more variation. So then you can have a bunch of different combinations where maybe going to B flat, you go from half step below, and then going to C, you go from half step above. But you can just do a bunch of different combinations and practice your vocabulary, practice, your understanding of this concept with a bunch of different ways of doing it. So try to have that as a goal, as something that you want to achieve, where you see the chords, you can have it in front of you the way I have right here. You can memorize it, of course, that's even better. But you know where you're going, and you can use those chord tones, which is the 1, 3, 5, and 7, plus the chromatic approach to create a nice organic bass line. Okay, so that's how we're going to deal with accompaniment on the blues, in this basic blues. With that in mind, let's now get 5 licks that we can play with a blues scale over a blues, and you can add them to your vocabulary. You can use them to create solos. Just feel free to use as you please, and make sure, try to transpose this. All of this is available for download on the Patreon, so make sure to check the description. Here we go, 5 licks on the blues scale.